Okay, so everybody, welcome to April Meetup for Melbourne Python user group. So good to have everybody here. Please scan this QR code if you are not on our Slack already. And before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we meet on here today. I would also like to pay my respect to elders past and present. Thank you. And we have a small code of conduct. Please be respectful to everyone, keep the place clean, and you can find out more on the GitHub. And if you want to get connected with us, you can also get updates on LinkedIn and connect with us on Mastodon as well. Thank you. Now for the agenda. The introductions is already going on. We have our first exciting talk with Geoff about Streamlit in the secondary classroom. He is going to talk about his experience teaching Streamlit to some year 10s and 12s if I'm not mistaken. And then we'll have a short break. Then we have exciting panel coming up for students here. Please get your questions ready. You can ask them to employers. We have exciting list of employers from Bureau of Meteorology, MYOB, that's my bad, sorry. Then Judo Bank and Kogan. Then we'll be closing off the meetup at 7:45 and the doors finally close at 8. So please be mindful of the time. And a big thanks to our venue sponsors. I'd like to welcome Michael from Judo Bank.
Thank you all. It's great to see everyone here today. If you don't know about Judo Bank is a bank playing in the SME sector, handling anything from agricultural to retail for loans for small businesses. We also do term deposits and have recently launched a very exciting new high interest online savings account, which the rates have hit #1 on the boards for best rate. The toilets here are located all the way at the back to the right hand side. Please be aware they are all gendered. The fire escape, which unfortunately had to use 2 meetups ago, if anyone remembers, is located behind the doors over there. We will help you out if that occurs again. Hopefully it doesn't. If there are any issues with anything in the facilities or you need any help with anything, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of the volunteers. And I hope you have a really enjoyable talk. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Michael. And we hope we don't need the safety exit. Okay. And we would also like to thank our event sponsors, AWS and Neo4j. Do we have anybody here from the team? I don't think, but yeah, thanks a lot for the great food and drinks. Okay, this is our link, again, the QR code for Slack. You can scan. I'll give you a few minutes to scan if not already on the Slack. It seems we have a lot of new members. Good to see new faces. All right. If you're wondering how to get involved in the meetup group, come chat to me, Rinaldi, or any other volunteers. I think Nigel is there as well. And this is our mailing list. You can scan this to sign up. And with that, I'd like to welcome Geoff for, let's get started with the first talk. Please, small round of applause. Or
Thanks so much. Thanks. So, yep. There we go. This is me. I'm a high school teacher for the most part. So feeling a little bit like a fish out of water in this place. We've been made to feel very welcome. I've been teaching in secondary schools for over 15 years now. I came into secondary teaching through through having done a little bit of time in Oracle Application Server Administration, which was a real adventure. I've been teaching IT kids for about 15 years. So I'm sharing some of what I've been playing around with my students, which hopefully, even though very few of you are unlikely to ever be in front of a group of Year 10s teaching them how to program, hopefully we can get something from regardless. I got excited about Streamlit a couple of years ago. I had to play with, as I say, with some Year 10s and some Year 12 groups. Tried a bunch of things all at once, which had mixed results, and so who doesn't like sharing about their kind of successes, kind of failures? And so that's kind of the plan today. Starting point with any technology that ends up in our classrooms, especially if it's going to be adding anything on, if I have to teach kids how to pip install something, then it has to be worth it, because I spent some time today trying to work out which Python environment of the 7 that this kid had managed to find their way onto his laptop was causing the problems with Streamlit not being installed in it. But so quick show of hands so that I don't tell you what you already know. Heard of Streamlit? Most? Played around with Streamlit? Done a bit? Yeah, okay. Less than most. So in terms of what Streamlit is, sounds like most of us know, primarily it's not built for people like me. It's not built for me to use in the classroom. It's not what they're trying for. I just think it matches well. It's a rapid application development Python library. It's built for building some pretty simple web apps, quickly getting something up and going, and data dashboards. What I have really loved in the secondary classroom is it's such a low floor, high ceiling tool. You can get something going in your first lesson straight away. And the limit on what kids can do, they hit a point where they move from Streamlit sort of supporting what they want to do to Streamlit getting in the way of what they want to do. But for a kid who's hit that point, that's exactly what I want them to hit anyway. So it's a really good balance for the sort of thing. If you haven't heard of Streamlit and so Dash, Radio, Panel, these are the sorts of app that are in the same sort of space. So, why bother? For my students, teaching kids to program, I love a text-based interface. You probably love text-based interfaces. My students love a text-based interface for about a lesson. And then the feeling of being a hacker is faded and they don't know what's going on anymore. And it feels really disconnected from their life. They are creating things that they can't go and feel like, oh yeah, this is a finish. They don't feel like their work is finished. I work pretty hard to try and combat that and try and help them to see that this is actually what it looks like in a real environment. But that's often where they sort of sit. I'm also a really firm believer that even in high school, kids are capable of building things that show off the skills they've got. I've taught plenty of students who are far more capable programmers than I am, but they finish year 12, and for students that have found their thing, building a project that can be put on the web and show off some skills to potential employers or to mum and dad on parent-teacher interview night, demonstrate, that's a really, really worthwhile endeavour. And something that you can, as I say, show off, might not have them knocking back their maths shifts just yet, but really gives them something that they can feel very proud of and potentially pretty quickly turn into, at least a handy sort of side hustle. So the beauty of this for me is that if I've, as I say, been teaching programming for about 15 years, I've been probably working in Python for about 10, I reckon. I traipsed through teaching kids PHP for a little bit. I started on, the first year I moved to my school, it was VB6, which was, a real adventure. But the tough part with Python is, if I want to create something visual, we go from this sort of code, this feels very achievable, very great, let's go, to this is what the visual version of this looks like. It's a little bit cheeky to choose TK Engine, but TK Engine is the one that I can get without installing something. That's what it's going to look like. And the choice then becomes, I can either say, I need to work our way through all of that for this relatively low payoff in terms of the feeling that students getting in terms of hooking them into it, or I can wave my hand around and go, you're going to trust me on all of this stuff, and this bit here is the bit that I want you to do and learn and think about. And ultimately you lose trust with kids. If you have to do that much hand waving, you are just having to work a lot harder than that. Whereas if I'm doing that with my kids in Streamlit, once we've got it installed, once the thing is running, we move from that to this, and kids get it. All right, beautiful, great. And now we're actually, instead of us thinking about a whole bunch of syntax and a whole bunch of whatever, we're actually thinking, okay, I just need to think about how I'm using input. I need to think about how I want this to show up. Which, as I say, gets somebody like me excited, and it also just becomes a playground. A kid understands every single part of this code. I can tell them, I can explain what importing a library is. And from there, they can do most of it, right? They can understand that we've got functions that are returning values. That's most of what you need to know, and away we go. As I say, the frustration with a tool like Streamlit comes way down the track. At this point, it just gets the hell out of the way, which, as I say, gets me very excited. Yes, beautiful. Today I was working with my Year 12s. They're the one part of the Year 12 software development curriculum that where we move away from doing things that people would actually do when they're creating. Well, certainly anyone at their level would be creating. We have to teach them searching and sorting algorithms, and that they implement them in Python, which they are thrilled about. So, but again, very quickly we get something with a really low level of mucking around that looks very visual and feels like something that, hey, somebody else could be using this. So as I say, the beauty of something like Streamlit for the high school classroom, it gets out of the way. The fact that the app runs, so Streamlit sort of whole plan is it runs top to bottom, it runs like any other command line script, lots of inbuilt input and display components. Every time there's a new input, it'll rerun, which again, I'm sure everyone can work out that eventually gets really old, but not at the start it doesn't, it gets us going. And because it's a data thing, it works really nicely with plotting and data libraries. And for me, I really want the focus to be on the algorithm, on the data analysis, on the programming concepts, and something that gives me UI without the UI being the whole focus really is the exciting part. So, as I say, getting this stuff up and going is often the battle in a classroom. So while also throwing a brand new technology, I thought, why not throw all of the brand new technologies I could find at it? And I watched a PyCon AU talk by Renee Noble about how great GitHub code spaces in the classroom were in education space. So, all right, away we go, we'll throw it all in. And so I probably don't need to tell you too much about what's going on here, but so code spaces, nice dev container, full VS Code environment in the browser. The beautiful part for me, as someone who's does very definitely not know what the hell he's doing when it comes to containers and that sort of business, is that Streamlit's online sort of sharing platform uses code spaces as well, and so I could steal their config, which worked a treat. Could not believe how well that worked. I was thrilled. Eliminates the need for local installs on laptops. Unfortunately, if you're working in a classroom like mine, where you've got wildly varying levels of engagement in what you're doing, the fact that it can be really slow to start up can be a little bit of a killer. I have students who will try and avoid finding their way towards the work as long as they possibly can, and if you're 10 minutes in and then it's going to be another 5 minutes to get this thing going, it can be a little bit of a tragic one. And then GitHub Classrooms are kind of handy little. It still feels a little bit hacky to me. I think it feels hacky to them probably, but build a repo and it sort of spits it out to all the students who are signed up. They accept their link and then they get their own private copy, and it means I'm not mucking around with getting kids to share stuff with me. Yeah. But yeah, so it sort of works. They get it pre-configured, it all sort of starts up and off they go. Was the view. It's only clicking every second time, it's really great. All right, so in terms of just contextually, here's how we started it. Digital technologies class, wide variety of interest in the subject. Tragically, at my school, we are working hard to try to rectify some gender balance in our classes, but this class, which is not necessarily completely always the case, but was all boys. And I had two groups of kids. I had a really sporty crew, and I'm a big, sad Richmond fan. And so I get on quite well with those guys, but don't necessarily manage to leverage that into making them do anything. And then I had a bunch of gamers who are sort of very much, yeah, whether we're actually any good at this or not, we want to be good at this, so away we go. Most had never coded before, which is weird for a Year 10 classroom. That shouldn't happen, but sometimes that happens with just the way things go. So, we kicked off. Tragically, well, it was lovely for me. I was on leave for the first 2 weeks of the course, and I thought, all right, self-paced tutorials. We'll get them to do the Python basics all on their own, and then we'll kick off with some Streamlit work, and we'll be able to play around with stuff. And wouldn't you know it? Turns out when your regular teacher's not there, you don't quite put in the same level of effort as you should. So one of the things that sort of killed my first experiment a little bit, didn't kill it completely, but killed my first experiment a little bit, was it turns out that kids are not that good at learning to program if they at programming in a Python library if they haven't really got Python down. So anyway, that's sort of how we set things up. This is sort of, I think, like Streamlit I think has changed. You can do pages differently, but when I was setting it up, or at least some of the documentation I was reading, you have to put the name of the title that you want for the page in your file name, which is funky. Anyway, so that's what it looked like. There's a GitHub repository there if you want to have a look at my secret shame. And how did it go? Like, okay. So what I saw was it worked really well for the confident kids. Kids were getting a return because they were making progress. Weaker students found at least something that they connected with. And unfortunately, I'd really created Streamlit tasks rather than Python tasks, which was just I mean, a bit dumb for an experienced teacher to be falling for. And it's an easy trap to fall for. We fall for shiny toys and we forget why we wanted that in the first place. Found it back the other way. Kids did actually really connect with the idea of just hooking up to an API. Sadly, I mean, it never really finds its way into the Victorian curriculum, just because we're a bit slow to adapt to things and quite often a bit scared. But it was a lovely way to get kids back interested again as our sort of our final point in that topic area. Code space is a real mixed bag. They're definitely not built for laptops that are 4 years old that are 11-inch screens. And I don't know that anyone wants to be coding anything on an 11-inch screen ever. But especially knowing it's got half the window as a preview window and disaster. Kicked it around with my Year 12s and certainly with Year 12s in data analytics. It was a little bit dubious. It was a little bit more, so the Year 12's data analytics curriculum is technology agnostic. So you can sort of do what you want in terms of data visualization, but it's definitely not built for you to be doing too much code. It's mostly built around you making things look pretty. And however, for my kids, we alternated at school between the two subjects, and so that sort of worked okay for them. Cool. So they went better. For those with less programming experience, a lot of templates and sample code and modifying from there sort of really helped them get up and running. And a few of my kids just really took to it. We got some very cool stuff, and that interactivity was really sort of way for them. I feel like I might have just spoken quicker than I meant to, but we'll see how we go. So some takeaways that came through for me, like practice. When kids are learning, practice is more important than extra content. Again, embarrassing error for a 15-year experienced teacher to be making, but focusing on the thinking skills. I think we had a platform that sort of could have worked for that, and I'm frustrated that for that group at least, we're about to run it again semester 2 this year, so that should be fun. But that's one of the things that certainly came through. Practice is more important than extra content. I suffer from GeoCities syndrome. I get some blank looks when I say this one, but some people just look at you and they know exactly what you mean. I grew up when GeoCities was the way that you got anything up onto the internet as a relatively new internet, and that was the coolest thing in the world to me. So I still feel like any time I create something and it ends up on the internet, that should give me a really big buzz. And it does give my kids a really big buzz, but I'd possibly get a little bit more excited about how they're going to go than they do. The thing that I think is really cool is this is a space that just makes a ton of sense to me in terms of the overlap. There is a ton of really good stuff going in around the data science community that plays really naturally in education. And I think, like, it was really funny to me that when I was trying this out, I couldn't find resources anyway because nobody's worked that one out. It seems like, obviously plenty of people worked it out, but nobody's telling everyone. And that sort of. This is just a dumb one. I just couldn't get kids to freaking commit their work, and so they were doing good stuff. I mean, some of them, and I just couldn't see it. So yeah, that was a pretty obvious one. And like, I'm just, as I say, I think I started by saying that I feel like a real outsider in this community because I'm not, ostensibly not, in the IT industry. I'm in a high school. But I've just found that so many opportunities where whether it's just whether it's things like being able to have PyCon videos that are just available and you can learn the most obscure fun things and become an expert really quick, or whether it's just the welcome that you get from people, like just a massive raffle. And as somebody who's potentially bringing students into a community like this, I feel really good about telling them these are good people, and that's a really nice thing to be able to do. So yeah, like I'll probably play around with not making the year 10s wait 5 minutes for their dev container to start up. What I'd like you to leave with is, so certainly Streamlit's a really has enormous potential for anyone teaching or learning new code in Python. And like, I'd also just love, like, I think that Venn diagram of data science and education, if you're in data science right now, like, find a teacher who just needs to know about your stuff, because there's so much there that so obviously overlaps, and there's some really cool things. That's the one. Yeah, well done. And look, for anyone in education, just play with stuff with your kids. Try learning alongside is the great privilege of being a Digitech teacher. Right? I also teach maths. I don't do any learning alongside those kids. I've learned this stuff for a long time ago. And the reason I come back to my dinky little Digitech classes is it's just really fun to learn alongside. So looking around the room, it doesn't look like I've got too many parents in the room, but like, it's just a fun thing to walk with a kid and teach them how to do this stuff. And so I think that's about what I have to say. Great.
Thanks, Geoff. it was really interesting to know about how you taught students and how was the response. So, really nice. Do we have any questions for Geoff? Yeah.
Yes, how did you introduce Git to students without getting Child Protective Services involved? Quite fascinating, but I do wonder, without getting too far into the nuts and bolts of it, how do you grade the assignments when they turn them in? What is the mechanics of them doing the work and then presenting the work to you as a teacher?
Yeah. So as in, like, what's my rubric, or are you meaning like how to actually make that work?
Yeah, like without getting, I guess,
Yeah, sure.
into the weeds.
I mean, like, to be honest, a lot of the time, by the time the kids submitted the work, we've been walking it together, and I know exactly what's in their work.
All right.
Like, so, and obviously, I mean, the one that no one wants to talk about in education is that, like, when kids have pulled work in from an AI assistant, it's immediately obvious.
Yeah.
Because fortunately they're just not that good, and they definitely don't write that many comments. But like, but yeah, it's lots of just sort of yeah. Look, sometimes it's running a whole bunch of crappy little apps one after the other.
Okay.
And sometimes but yeah, usually a quick look through the source code, you got a pretty good idea of what the kid's been able to do.
I think the comments would let you know that this was AI generated or student did it by themselves or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way. Sorry, I'll come back to you. There you go.
You mentioned that you saw Renee Noble's talk. Did you watch one of her talks about Girls Programming Network? Do you use any of their templates for your teaching as well?
I haven't pulled down any of their templates. I have sent my daughter along to the last couple of events here in Melbourne, so I'm a big fan. But yeah, and maybe I've just been a bit dumb when I've gone looking. I don't know how much of their stuff I've seen as available to download, but I'm probably wrong. I probably just haven't tried hard enough.
I think you can see the student one for free. I'm not sure if it's
Yeah, that would make some sense. Yeah.
So going back to the pain of Git, I recommend you check out Jujitsu. It's JJ. It's a more simplified
Cool.
interface.
Yeah, nice.
It's probably a lot easier for students that just get the simpler concepts.
Yeah, we're not. Great, thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned AI. I was just wondering, do you think like it's good if the students do kind of get some interaction with like ChatGPT? Because I remember like one of my first wow moments with AI was like it was able to generate Snake first time in Python.
Yeah.
So like sometimes building a game like that kind of has a bit of magic in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've done, I think that's the environment where I've been really keen to give kids. So at a lesson where half the kids are off on an excursion, so I had half the class, I'm like, we don't want to move forward. Let's vibe code and see what we can do, right? Let's give it a crack, find out what's good. The trouble is, like those basics absolutely have to get embedded before you get any learning value out of doing it, right? You can get the rush and you go, great, I know how to do that. And so now, if you've got some basics and you go and play with an AI tool, then you're learning where you can go with that, right? If you don't have any basics and you play with the AI tool, you learn that you can use AI to do that, and that's all you do. And that's cool for a bit, but it's not a learning. It's a fun activity rather than a really learning environment.
I think a more controlled environment for students would be a better option rather than just giving them access to ChatGPT, because it's not just limited to code, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
I wanted to know if you're able to gauge as to how many of these students are now still having optimism about having a career in CS and taking that up in uni.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think so. I like a lot of my students don't come in with that in mind, right? They're looking to learn some skills. They're looking to probably pick a subject where they're confident they're going to be able to use their laptop most of the time. But yeah. So I think some of my kids are a little bit concerned. I'm in a lucky position where, at very least, it's not necessarily a great time to be somebody who's an expert in digital technologies. It's a really good time to know a little bit for exactly what we're sort of talking about, right? So that sort of knowing that's how I've been able to sell for a lot of my kids. That like, you might not go on to do this, but there's lots of places these skills will take you. Having said that, there are still some kids who this is their thing, and they'll find their way there. And I feel like when I was coming through school, and probably my first 4 or 5 years of teaching, I had kids who were going, I want to get into IT because it's it's paying really well, it's a great career, and like, I'm not that interested in it, but it's a good way to go. And that hasn't been there for 10 years, I would say. The kids in my relatively middle to low SES, socioeconomic sort of public high schools, they're not, that's not happening. What is happening is the kids who are going, this is my thing, and I'll find a way, and if I don't find a way, I'll find a way to use those skills. Like that's what I'm saying.
That makes sense.
Cool.
First of all, I would like to thank you. Probably teacher is like one of the hardest jobs, especially teaching.
Tell the state government right now. No, sorry.
I kind of like have a question about the projects. Like when you select the projects, like how you kind of like select them? Or is it not? I can kind of like understand that you have to give credit to the level of the coding kids can do, but like how do you find like the projects which will be interested?
Sure. And the answer is like mostly by making a bunch of mistakes. But I think it's about finding a real balance. One of the toughest things for kids is if you go make a project, it can be whatever you want it to be. And in actual fact, at year 12, that's what they set up. They set up essentially like build a program that solves a need or an opportunity, which is just a real pain because that's too much decision, and a kid just gets paralysed and they go, I don't know what to do until a deadline comes and they pick something crap, or they pick one from the example that's on the list, right? And so it's sort of narrowing down so that you don't go too far, so you don't leave kids paralysed, but you do give them an opportunity to find something they're interested in. So that's where like the finishing task on that year 10 one was really quite nice, because I just had to go find enough different APIs out there that I had something that was probably going to match with somebody's interests everyone's interest in the room. And like the part they had to do was to fit read from the API, transform it in some way, show me a graph, good, bingo, right? Like, well done. And it's sort of what they're sort of connecting with that sort of works with that. But the other thing is that like success is just really motivating, and so like you can get as a teacher, you can get really worried about making sure that your project's really exciting or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, if a kid can see that they're making progress, then they're actually less worried about that's why like the end at which I have to hook the kid is at the starting end, and that's why like I get excited about something Streamlit, because it's at that end that I have to get you in. Because then after that, once you start putting one foot in front of the other, I didn't know how to do that, know how to look at the documentation, now I can. Freaking amazing. And like that's as soon as you got them on that chain, it kind of doesn't matter what I've given them, as long as I can see that they're moving forward.
That's good to hear. You have a question?
Oh yeah. Are there a couple of projects that you found were particularly good for getting that kind of spiral going?
Sorry. Look, what's been good? What's been really good? I mean, so working with sort of more of the data science end rather than sort of then getting too far into processing stuff's been actually quite good for a big chunk of kids, right? Especially those kids who that's their thing. So yeah, so having them see that they can create something that's pretty interactive that actually tells them something has been pretty cool. Where they're creating something that answers the question that they couldn't just get by looking at a spreadsheet or whatever. That kind of sort of gets a bit of go. But also then, yeah, I mean the stuff that works is when kids go small and then they iterate, and which I mean, I'm telling group programs that, but that's what sort of helps is when you go because kids will get super excited about a finished product that looks like, yeah. I mean, I teach a game development course, and kids come in wanting to create the next first-person shooter. And you're like, let's bring as small as we can and iterate rather than going big and falling flat on our face.
Nice, that's good. Really sorry, but being mindful of the time, we have time for break, and you can continue to ask questions directly to Geoff. And thank you so much, Geoff. That was really interesting topics. And let's come back around 7:50 on the panel.